you looking for a different level of truth about your challenges and struggles? Then be a part of the Yes and podcast, hosted by empowerment strategist and trauma specialist Jennifer Whitaker. Every Wednesday, we challenge conventional thinking on topics like trauma, healing, and so much more. Learn life lessons and great nuggets of wisdom from guests who've moved through their pain and suffering to discover a new purpose in life. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Whitaker.
Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Whitaker, and you are listening and or watching this week's episode of Yes and. Shari Alyse has spent her life learning how to love herself fully and completely. And she was motivated by her own journey through childhood sexual abuse and other childhood traumas. Shari helps women and men discover their joy by reconnecting them back to themselves through the practice of self-love. Shari is a best-selling author of the book, Love Yourself Happy. She's a motivational speaker, a self-love coach, and she's also co-founder of the Wellness Universe, a community of world changers who are helping the world become happy, healthy, and whole. Shari, it's an honor to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I am honored to share this space with you.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to have you here too, because as you know, I'm a trauma specialist and I focus my work on developmental and intergenerational issues. And just in your introduction, there's a developmental issue right there. So let's just jump into the tough stuff and get that out of the way.
Okay.
So how did this affect you? Because there's a lot of research on how childhood adversities and childhood sexual abuse is a really big deal that we carry with us throughout our entire life until we face it. So how did this affect you? And how did you finally face it?
It's a big story in and of itself, because obviously there's different layers and levels of discovery of how it affected me.
Mm-hmm.
There was the walking through my childhood and my teenage years and early 20s, not realizing that it was affecting me. But obviously looking back and knowing now, making choices that were based off of the ways that I was feeling, choices like, men, unhealthy relationships, some promiscuity, partying, overeating. I was very, very heavy. I used a lot of, my numbing mechanism of choice was food, but what was interesting for me is in my book, I share the story about how I had prosecuted the guy who sexually molested me.
Mm-hmm.
I had taken him to court at 7 years old. And so that in and of itself had its own full set of, issues following that. But what I had been taught from that young age was that I had already handled what had happened to me. I put the guy in jail and now we're moving forward from that. And so everybody, it was 1981 and, nobody was talking about sexual abuse. And so for everyone, including my parents, including me, it was like, okay, we've now put this in the drawer and now we're going to move forward from it.
Yeah.
And as you know, we don't. But
Right.
So there were the years of thinking, well, I'm strong and I'm brave, like everybody told me I was, and I did the right thing. And so you just kind of power through it. But of course, all of my behaviors weren't me having dealt with it, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until years later, many years later, almost recently, within the last 10 years, where I really have uncovered and discovered the ways that it had affected me, the ways that I hadn't dealt with it, and then also the facing of what happened to me. So, yeah.
And how did you eventually face what happened to you? And, whenever we say face what happens to us, that means something a little bit different to each one of us. So,
Right.
Yeah. What did that look like for you?
Well, as I got older and I was in my 20s and I started my whole spiritual journey, I had this crazy heartbreak. My ex-fiance like broke my heart. And so like, I didn't know how to deal with it. So I started reading a whole bunch, like these spiritual books just started coming to me. And so I started learning how to connect more and more within. And the more and more that I connected and really sat in that space, I recognized there was hurt in there. I recognized there were feelings that were untapped. But at that point, I still wasn't ready to deal with those feelings. So it was my first recognition that there's something there, you know, but I was like, nope, not ready to deal with you yet. And so we pushed those back down. And it wasn't until I kept seeing that they kept showing up everywhere. You can't outrun them. That it wasn't until I actually took this trip to Sedona, based off of I was, there goes my set, guys. It was so funny. I was like, this might happen to us. We're live, guys. Hey, how do you like my guest bed? Not awkward at all. That's all right. I always talk about being imperfect.
It's all good. I can't even close my door because if not, I have a cat who opens doors and she'll like creak it and paw at it until she gets in. So I'm just like, I leave it open. Sometimes I have a cat crawling around. That's
okay. Now it looks like we're in this crazy 3D world because it's literally just sitting on me. That's all right. Just don't move, Shari. All right. Well, guys, this is what happens in life. Okay.
It is. It's what happens in life. I don't expect perfection. I like real.
That's actually one of the things that I have dealt with my ongoing. That's one of lead. Perfectionism showed up for me. But what I was going to say is that, you know, I was in my 30s at this point and I was waiting tables. I was, you know, working on becoming this famous actress, which was another thing, this external validation for me. And I was getting ready for work and I had this total breakdown in the showers. I was getting ready for work. All of the memories, everything from that particular day had come back to me for the first time, where I wasn't an observer of it. I was actually in it. And so in that moment was the first time that I really truly recognized that I had not dealt with this stuff. And the only thing I knew, the only thing that made sense to me was that I had to get out of town. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know where I was going and why I was going there, but I was just led. And I've always been one, Jennifer, that just like listens when I don't want to ignore something, but when it's so strong, that voice, it's like, just go and listen. And it led me to Sedona, which ultimately led, and I shared in detail in my book, it ultimately led to coming, and for some people, this might sound crazy, but that's okay. It led me coming face to face with my 7-year-old self. On top of one of the vortexes in Sedona. And in that moment for me, I realized that there was this part of me, my inner child, that still was very hurt and very alone and just needed more. But I still wasn't ready for that at the time. And so what I had realized, what I thought she needed or what I needed was for me to let her go and stop protecting her, stop filling myself with food, because the way that I understood it is that I was filling my body with food in order to keep her safe, keep people at bay from me. And so my logical mind, or even my heart at that time, thought that that's what that was, or that's where I needed to be at that time. And so I left her. I said, you know what, like, it's time that I stop protecting you and it's time that I start taking care of me. And so I was like, okay, this is it. I am ready to really start looking after myself and really start facing what happens or what had happened, which then led me on a further journey many years later, which ended me up in Italy, where I had spent 3 months on my own by myself. And I learned a lot about me, because that's the challenge with a lot of us, is that we're so busy in life and we're so distracted and we're taking care of everybody else and we're trying to fill all the shoes of everyone everywhere, and we often lose sight of ourselves. And until I got to Italy, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to go off to do that, but what I am like suggesting is that you just spend a lot of time with yourself. And in that time with myself is when I came to the understanding that I really need to figure this crap out.
Yeah, exactly. And I love hearing your story, because the language that I speak of as a trauma specialist to help people understand what's happening inside of them all of these feelings that kept coming up, that you're talking about, like even coming face to face with your little girl and, like the feeling of that, or whenever you broke down, getting ready for work that day. That's what I call the experiencer. That's our implicit mind. And the implicit mind is often the hidden control panel. And the experiencer is nonverbal. It experiences life through the language of sensation and emotion. And because it's nonverbal, we often use our narrator, our cognitive mind, to push it aside and tell a story that overrides the feeling and the sensation. And the inner child, all those feelings are often held within the experiencer. And the more we push it down and the more we ignore it, and your story illustrates this perfectly, it will come back myriad ways to get our attention. Yeah. And whenever we don't pay attention to it, that's when oftentimes we get diagnosed. The more we ignore it, with diseases like chronic illness, like autoimmune disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, the experiencer will present itself, and it will cause us to suffer until we pay attention. And once we start to go within and pay attention, and start to listen to it, and like you said, start to love it, then we start to get better, and our health starts to bounce back, and our health starts to improve. And coming face to face with your little girl at this vortex in Sedona, that's bringing in the visionary, which is our subconscious mind that sees the world through images and pictures and our dreams, nightmares, how we sort things out. And whenever we can align, when we can get our butt in the seat of the observer, I think a lot of us know that we have an observer in there somewhere. It's harder to tap into, but when we can get our butt in the seat of the observer and we can align from the seat of the observer, the narrator, the visionary, and the experiencer, to where they're all on the same page, life changes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you just described in your story. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I got the goosebumps as you said that, because that's where I feel like I'm at, where they've all, it's very interesting to hear you discuss that and share that and just describe that more than anything, because it all makes so much sense to me. And that's where I felt like it was just 2 years ago where my health, so you said, like, came to, I don't even know what the word is, but it was just like I was at this point, and I feel like it's often when we have these major things happen in our lives where like our defenses come down, when we're pushed up against the wall and we have nothing left anymore. And that's what I felt like. I was fearful of what was happening in my body. I didn't know if I would get better. I didn't know what else to do. And so I kind of surrendered.
Right.
And that surrendering is when I finally was able to really hear what she needed. And what she needed from me was a hug.
Yeah, exactly.
That was like literally the game changer for me, because she didn't need anyone to tell her that it was going to be okay. And she didn't need anyone to tell her how brave and how strong she was. She just needed someone to just sit there with her and hug her and hold her.
Yeah.
And literally that has changed where I'm at right now. And it's a practice that I teach with my clients that I do every single day, are self-hugs.
Yeah.
Because that's all she wanted from me. And now that we've all, as you said, aligned, it feels like everything makes sense.
Yeah. Now, when you say love yourself, explain a little bit about what that means. Because I remember when I was younger, I would hear people say, oh, you need to love yourself. And I'm like, that's just selfish. That's just ego. Right. So can you tell us what that means, please?
Yes. So for me, loving myself looks like acceptance. Loving myself looks like the acceptance of where I'm at, of the challenges that I face, even the ways that I show up in those experiences. Meaning maybe I don't always make the best choices. Maybe I screw up sometimes. Loving myself looks like compassion for myself and the acceptance of it. Those two, and kindness and patience. It's really like, I feel like they're branches of a tree, and there's all these self-acceptance, self-expression, self-love, self-compassion, like all of these that all make up what self-love really is. And it's really about strengthening all those aspects of ourselves to fully come into this feeling of love. Because when I think what you're saying, or what I'm hearing, and what I think people experience as self-love seems like this, oh, you got to love yourself before, but no one knows what that practically looks like.
Right.
And that's why I feel like as I just mentioned, those different areas of self-love, you can actually literally do exercises and things to strengthen each one of those areas. And
Mm-hmm.
all of those areas are strengthened, your self-worth, like the trunk of the tree, is like really solid. And you just, I hate to say it, well, I don't hate to say it, but you just love yourself. It just,
Mm-hmm.
everything feels okay.
Yeah. And it's an internal shift.
Yes.
And whenever we're looking, you mentioned, wanting to be a famous actress,
Mm-hmm.
with that external validation. When our goals are extrinsic, whenever we let the world and we let other people tell us what our goals are and what's valuable to us, then we suffer inside of ourselves. But when we can connect inside of ourselves and realize that, wow, what I need is that daily hug.
Yeah.
And it really is an internal shift, or that's been my experience.
Well, because sorry.
Mhm. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because when you're talking about the external stuff, I think the reason why all of us seek that external validation is because we haven't actually connected within to know what we need.
Right.
Just know that there's something missing, something feels not quite right, something is off. And so the only ways that we know is to go seek that, whether it's through a career, whether it's through a relationship, or whether it's through food, or even it's working out 6 times a day. We're looking for something to fill that space within that just doesn't feel right.
Exactly. And we're inundated with messages all around us about, if you wear this makeup, you'll be beautiful enough to get the guy of your dreams. Or if you drive this car, you'll be, macho enough to attract the girl of your dreams, or you'll look cool if you do this. And, just like all the marketing, like I could go on and on and on about the marketing and propaganda. I think everybody knows. And we do. Logically, we know. And at the same time, we still fall for it.
Because, well, again, it's because I don't think that we know anything better. Because my feeling is, and I've thought long and hard about this, because in my own journey is that, and I talk about it again in the book, and I don't mean to just keep bringing up the book, but the book is the ways that I feel, and it's from the young age, we've all at some point have experienced some sort of like letdown, or some sort of betrayal, some sort of disappointment, something where we've shown up in our brightest selves, filled with joy and filled with this freedom. And at some point, somebody has let us down. And what we've learned, I believe, is that this beautiful open space that was vulnerable has now been hurt. And so we learn to shut that down and close that off and begin to build these walls. And so that is where I feel like we have now separated from ourselves, from our truth, which is the voice that, of course, always guides us and lets us know. And we only hear it when we go quiet. It's like this distant voice behind that's like, hey, don't forget about me.
Right.
But, we're just filling it with everything and everybody. And so that's how we lose track. And that's why we think the car is going to be the answer. Or that's why we think the relationship's going to be the answer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I couldn't say that any better myself. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's, it's just that. So when you mention things like, the beliefs that we've come to believe about what is going to serve us, that's why I think, because we have not connected back to who we are.
Right. Yeah. And that experiencer will keep screaming at us until we do.
Right.
And if we don't, we will just continue to suffer.
Yep. Keep dating the same guys dressed in different clothes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I got it.
And I'm just curious, Shari, are you aware of the ACE test, the Adverse Childhood Experiences?
I'm not.
I wanted to bring this up because, again, there's so many elements of what you said that really align with that. So Adverse Childhood Experiences is a test that's come up recently and when I say recently, within the last couple decades, and increasingly therapists and psychologists and counselors are using it more and more. And there are 10 questions on the test that highlight 10 common adversities in childhood. We're in the beginning stages, so I see this modifying over time. I don't think it's in its final form because there are certain things that are left out, in my humble opinion. And what prompted this study was, decades ago, there was a psychologist who decided he was going to do group therapy for weight loss. And as he was doing the health history forms and the intake forms, he discovered that all these people who showed up who were overweight, obese, and wanted to lose weight. One thing that it was like 70-80% of them had reported on their intake form childhood sexual abuse. And he's like, you don't suppose. And that's what prompted the research that eventually led to the ACE test, because they're starting to connect certain adversities in childhood that lead to certain disorders in adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're connecting, trauma to a lot of the stuff that we deal with. And, addiction is one of those things that comes from childhood trauma. And we've been told over and over and over and over again that addiction is a substance hook. Well, addiction is so much more than that. There's usually, we're trying to fill a gap in our lives, and addiction's not just a substance or a drug or alcohol. Addiction can be food. Addiction can be behaviors.
Right.
And like your story parallels mine in many ways, just like I went through phases where I was bulimic.
Mm-hmm.
So like the binging and purging with food, the promiscuity, the dating the wrong person over and over again, and just all of those acting out behaviors that we don't realize why we're doing it.
Right.
It just seems acceptable in the larger culture. And in many ways, it kind of is.
Yeah. Sadly. It's interesting.
Because it's acceptable, that goes to show how traumatized our just entire culture is.
Right. And it's so interesting because I really do believe that as we are engaging people who have gone through this any kind of trauma, it's not like I was unaware that I was making poor choices. Like, as instinctually when something feels badly, but it's that feeling of either you don't know how to change it, or more importantly, you don't know if you're worthy of changing it, those behaviors. For me, it was both, because I always had that voice within that was always like, Shari, you deserve better than this. Don't do this again. There was always that voice. But then I always found myself still, as I like described, just putting my foot on the gas pedal, going into that brick wall and just heading straight for it anyway.
Right.
Because I didn't know if I deserved any better. Like, deep inside in our souls, I know we do, but I wasn't listening enough. I wasn't connecting enough. It was that faint voice off in the distance, that I was hearing, but it just wasn't strong enough. And so the only way that I got stronger was when I stopped going outward and started going inward.
Exactly. And I have yet to talk to somebody who has gotten beyond their trauma and beyond their, compensatory behaviors and bad habits that we develop as a result of trauma. I've yet to talk to somebody who's gotten to the other side of it without going through the tough stuff of facing themselves. If that person exists who was able to take a pill and magically get past it, I want to meet them.
Right. Totally.
Because, because it is, there's, right. Like, because the pills don't work.
Sell it in a bottle to everybody.
Right.
But the interesting thing, though, is, and the reason why, we know that most people don't want to do this is because nobody wants to face pain. Nobody wants to feel that again. But the truth of the matter is that we're feeling pain every single day in our lives through the choices we're making, through the ones we're not making. So there is some discontent in our lives, which is why we're, making these choices or doing or feeling this way. So for me, I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, well, you can either face it and feel it, but move through it. Yeah. Or else you can just keep feeling it every day and being in pain and never have the option of ever healing this damn thing.
Exactly. And then you get to a point where you realize the pain is your GPS, it's your compass. Whenever that pain starts to come up, you realize, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing? Where am I not in alignment with myself? The pain is the messenger. Right. It's not something to be pushed aside or ignored. That's our,
or cursed. It's a gift. It's
right.
A gift. It really isn't. I know people hate that aren't in that space hearing that. I'm like, I love being in pain. But it really does show you, like you said, where you are out of center, where you are and the parts that you have to work on. And that's where I'm at now. So every time something painful comes up, or every time I make a food choice, I know that I want to, and I'm eating, because this is so important to express. Like, just because you've learned the tools and just because people look at you and think you're in this space where everything is great, You still face, I still face the same challenges that everybody does. Those same issues still
Yes.
show up.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about self-love is that I love myself through it. I sit
Yes.
and I ask myself, okay, what's going on that you're numbing yourself? Like, why are you sitting eating those bag of Sun Chips from top to bottom? Like, there is something happening. And so
Right.
I ask, how are you
Mm-hmm.
feeling? What's going on? What do you need from me?
Mm-hmm.
And that changes it all. That's, to me, what self-love is. It's not about being
Yeah.
perfect.
Exactly. Exactly. And it really, whenever you get to that level of connection within yourself, at least this has been my experience, your self-care practices change,
Mm-hmm.
because instead of doing it because I need to eat organic because it's healthy, it's a subtle shift inside yourself. Like, I want to
Yes.
put the healthiest stuff in my body that I
Yeah.
possibly can, because I care of this body that I'm
Yes.
in. And, and with this body, a lot of people say we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay, great. With this body comes pain. With this body
Mm-hmm.
comes suffering. With this body comes, um, you know, getting offended, getting triggered, which
Mm-hmm.
is our responsibility, not somebody else's.
Yes. Correct.
And comes happiness, comes joy, like both sides comes the full spectrum of yin and yang. And
Yes.
when we only accept the light side of the yin and yang and not the dark side, again, that's when we suffer.
Yes. And that was, I actually wrote that in the front, where my book is dedicated to my shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because thinking that there is only one side and that one side is only okay, then makes every time something challenging happens, you hating that, which then causes behaviors and choices that then are, more negative or detrimental
Yes.
to you. So it's like, what about if you just accept and embrace all that shows up? And then, some things are, here to guide you, and other things are, those moments of joy, but they're all to be appreciated.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, Shari, how did all of this end up with you co-founding the Wellness Universe? Because I'm guessing there's a connection.
Well, there is, but it's interesting because my journey has unfolded even more because of the
Uh-huh.
Wellness Universe. So there's
Ah.
still the beginning, middle, and end. Well, not end. We're still
Ah.
going. We're still going.
Right. You're still alive. There's no
I'm
end.
still here.
Not
I'm
yet.
still kicking. I'm still kicking, still driving my business partner, Anna, crazy.
Yeah, just more chapters to come.
Right. Exactly.
Sequels.
Yeah. No, the Wellness Universe literally showed up in my life because I had actually gotten to a point where I was so sick of controlling everything. I still deal with the control, but I was like, but I'm gentler on myself with that. But I was so sick of having to figure out how everything was going to play out. I was pursuing my acting career at the time. I was doing my speaking, a little bit of coaching, but I was just I just kept running into what I saw as roadblocks. Everything was so hard and I was pushing so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally said to God, I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just going to, whatever shows up, I just trust you. I'm going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And a week later, Anna came to me, who I didn't really know very well. We were connecting on Anna's, the other founder, the founder of the Wellness Universe.
Mm-hmm.
And we were connecting online. I was doing my videos, my inspirational videos, and she had her spiritual jewelry line. And so we knew each other, but we weren't good friends. And she came to me with this idea about bringing this community together of people who are changing the world. Now, to be perfectly honest, and she knows this, the idea of running a technology company and building a website and a platform for an entertainer was not something that lit me up inside. But what sounded amazing, because I had been praying for a team. I had been praying that I always wanted to change the world. And one day I discovered I couldn't do it on my own. As much as I wanted to, and I wanted all the spotlight and all the glory, there was no way I was going to do it. But a whole bunch of people could. So when she came to me with this idea, what came to me was oh, okay, well, it's not exactly what I envisioned, but it is all people that are here to better the world. Mm-hmm. And because I had just surrendered and I said I would say yes to everything, I said, sure. And so that was in 2013. And we both have just been head on in creating a community of people changing the world and offering all of the resources in all different areas of wellness to the general public so that they can become happy, healthy, and whole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really like where that little journey kind of intersected with that.
Yeah. Oh, that is wonderful. Yeah. And the wellness universe is really doing a lot of good out in the world. So can you tell us just a little bit more about the wellness universe, exactly what it is, what it looks like, and if somebody's interested, where, and it's just the wellnessuniverse.com. So it's easy to find.
Yes.
Super easy to find. So yeah.
So as I said, we've created this community, and by community we mean of wellness practitioners first in 7 areas of wellness. So it's not just physical wellness, and it's not just emotional, it's also spiritual wellness and intellectual and environmental. So different areas. And what we've done is we've created a directory, a search directory. So if you are someone who maybe is just looking at back issues, maybe it's something physical, and you come to the wellness universe and you put in back issues, and what can actually come up for you is not only a chiropractor, but maybe an acupuncturist, or maybe someone who does ancestral clearing, a whole myriad of different wellness resources and modalities to be able to assist you to healing what it is that you're going through. So it's the directory of wellness practitioners. And then as well, we have our own webinar and learning platform so people can attend classes. We've got our amazing blog. So we write articles every day from all of our Wellness Universe World Changers. So it really is the bridge between those who are wellness practitioners and then those who seek these resources.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about what we've done.
Yeah, it is. It's a fantastic platform. I've used it myself, and
you are.
And I have a profile on there. It is, and I through the Wellness Universe, some of the most amazing people have reached out to me, or I've reached out to them. I've connected with some fantastic people through the woo.
Yeah, through the woo. And then we do live events, of course, and everything. And that's really, I'm just going to be totally honest. Like, we have been online so long, and I feel like there is such a disconnect. Like I can't talk to thumbnails anymore. Like I want real people, I want those hugs. I want to give them out. I know what they feel like. And so part of the wellness universe is being able to bring people together in live events, so it's not just everything online, because it's in person where real connections and real healing and real just joy happens.
Yeah, it is. And I love the face-to-face aspect. I've been plotting my exodus from social media for about a year now. And each month I'm on social media less and less and less.
Good for you.
Yeah. So it does. It stresses me out so badly. Like my number 1 stressor in life is social media, and my number 2 is email.
And I actually think you're not alone. I think there's so many, like I wake up with a literal knot in here because I know that there's something waiting for me to do on social media or in my email. Like we're always connected, and there's no way it's hard to disconnect. One of my forms of self-care is going up to a cabin that I do every few months by myself that has no internet connection. And that is the only way that I could escape it, because I'll be honest, like if I've got my phone and I say I'm going to stay off of it, I'm still looking. I'm still scrolling. I'm one of those addicts there. So
yeah. So last summer, a little over a year ago, my toilet took a plunge. It didn't take a flush, but it took a plunge.
Okay.
So when I got my new phone, no socials went on it. None.
Good for you.
Oh my gosh, what a relief that is.
That's so smart.
It took me about a month to adjust from the constantly looking down and, wanting to look for the app. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's not here. It's not here. So maybe not a full month, but it was a few weeks. And now I can't even be trusted to have my phone when I leave the house. It's such a gift. It is such a gift.
Like honestly, if I didn't have my business, if our business wasn't online, like I would take a big break myself. I think And not to bring it back up, but I think we're all looking for something in here that we should be looking for in here. There's something, like, why are we sitting with the people that we love? And I'm not trying to like, be whatever, but why are we sitting with the people we love? And instead of communicating with them, we're like this, like what's in here that we
looking down and scrolling.
I'm still trying to figure it out, but to each his own.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I love conversations like this because even though, we're 3 time zones apart,
yes,
we can still connect. We can still be face to face, and there's more of a connection. Like we get more of the felt sense whenever we can see each other's body language.
Yeah.
And I've studied body language, and and with the implicit mind, I've studied body language, statement analysis, and micro expressions, and I apply that to the trauma work I do. Because the body language of somebody who is outright lying is pretty much identical to the body language of somebody who's traumatized. So it's not about trying to make people mind readers, because we can never fully be mind readers. And, and people are like, oh, you got your arms crossed, that means you're closed off. No, I'm freezing.
Cool. Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, quit reading my mind, darn it. It's about asking the right questions to find out, is somebody consciously suppressing information or are they subconsciously repressing it? Because there is a difference. And sometimes it's this weird mix of the two. Sometimes people know that they're being a little bit manipulative, but they don't know why, and they don't really know what they're feeling. And if you're judging somebody and you think you know what they're thinking or feeling, then and that happens so often on social media when you're just reading the comments or you're just reading the black and white words.
Yep.
We forget that somebody's intention doesn't always match our perception.
That's right.
And
That's so right.
and instead of asking the right questions to find out what is your intention, it's so easy just to jump in and attack, and then
And then also on the other spectrum too, there's the whole like comparison thing. Like people can look at other people, and because of course, as we've heard, you're seeing the highlight reels of people. Everybody thinks like that their life may be, pale in comparison, but you have no idea what that person's going through. Exactly. I had someone recently say to me, oh my God, you're having so much success, and how are you doing all this? And behind the scenes, I'm like, I am exhausted, like I'm tired, and I've made it my business and my mission as a speaker and as a self-love coach and as someone who is out there in the public to share it all. My dad used to say, why do you have to tell everybody everything? And I go, because I feel like I'm doing people a disservice by pretending like everything is all rainbows and butterflies, when I think the best thing that we can do for people is to tell truths, because in our truths, it makes us all feel less alone and makes us all feel like we are on the same path and we're all in this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my audience who follow me know that I ebb and flow with that. There are some days when I'm showing up all the time, and there are other times when, for my own self-care, I have to go within. I have to retreat. I have to pull away, because if I show up in those moments when it's time to retreat and really like go within and get myself straight, I'm inauthentic.
Yeah.
And then there's this little bit of behind my messages. I'm like, I can't keep doing that. I've just got to be me. And, so there is that ebb and flow. And even with like what we're doing today, like this show will go up next week on Wednesday, the edited version. And
without my falling
yeah, well, that'll still be in the video portion of it, because the edited version will be, video, audio, blog on my podcast page on my website, which is jenniferwhitaker.com. And and at the same time, it just putting the raw conversation out there whenever I record it. And like I said, it's just kind of my little loosey-goosey style. I tried that every Wednesday at noon Eastern time, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. And I connect with so many people around the world to try to bring them on my show. They're like, well, yeah, that's 3 a.m. for me. Is there any other time we can record? And I'm like, yeah, we'll figure that out. So
yeah, I think, it's so interesting. I think when we show up authentically in however that looks, that is what people are attracted to.
Yeah.
Years ago, when I was doing my hiking with Shari videos, like I had thousands of views and all of this thing. And this is before people, like, I've been doing videos probably close to 15 years before it became a thing. Everybody did, which is, but what people were so attracted to was just the showing up, you know, not and then I learned, like, through marketing, well, you should really say this when you start your video, and you should really do this. And as I started listening and not being who I was, all of a sudden my video views were going down. All of a sudden nobody was as interested. People wanted real. That's what we need. We need real. So if you show up on a Tuesday one week and Friday on a next week, like, who cares? Like, people just want to feel you.
Exactly. And, you know, when people start shooting all over you and you let them, that's when things,
messy situation.
That's when things literally start to go down the toilet. So don't shoot on yourself. Don't let people shoot on you.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So, Shari, I know that through the Wellness Universe, I believe it's just this year, y'all have started doing retreats.
Yes.
And I am so excited about this. I'm going to be presenting at Soul Treat at, you know, the first weekend of November. It's November 2nd and 3rd. And I'm so looking forward to that trip.
So am I. So so we've done other events before, but this is like our first, like, a few day retreat. And we, of course, I chose Sedona for obvious reasons. When I think about healing and I think about putting people in that space where there's beautiful energy and where beyond what all of you are bringing, just the environment itself is powerful. Sedona was it. Like, that was a no-brainer. And then to bring together our world changers over 2 days, healers and coaches and thought leaders, like, to spend 2 days with everybody. The first day is all about release. So every practitioner that's there, whether they're doing a workshop or a talk, is all about sharing how to release what holds us back. Those limitations that we talked about, the choices that we sometimes make that we don't understand why we're making them, but they're a pattern. You'll uncover those and discover those. And then on day 2, now that you've done all that work the first day, there's now, like, what I believe is this beautiful open space that's now ready to be filled up with resources and tools. So day 2 is all about resetting your mind, your body, and your spirit to be able to walk powerfully into the world. And so that's what Soul Treat is really about, spending those 2 days together, both practitioners and the general public, in a beautiful space, doing vortex walks together, you know, morning yoga, boot camp, not scary boot camp. Don't worry. We made sure of that. But just really an awesome opportunity to come together and really transform yourself from the inside out, because that, as you know, this connection within, as I talk about, that's why this retreat is so important. And it's the 2nd and 3rd. I can't wait for you to be there. Registration's only open until the 18th of October. So
I was going to ask about that. So just in case anybody is like, hey, I can go, where and how do they register?
So they'll go to the website, which is WU soultreat.com, WUSOULTREAT.com. And on there, they can go to the registration page and grab their ticket. Right now, we have 2 major sales going on. So there's a buy one, get one free ticket. So bring your best friend. It's the holiday time. Like, for me, I can never figure out what I want to get my fiance. So why not just give someone the gift of loving themselves at this retreat? So it's buy one, get one free. Or if you want to come by yourself, which some people are, you can grab your ticket for $247. There's a coupon code on there, Vortex, to be able to grab those. We only have like 10 left. So,
wow.
Yeah. So
that's exciting.
It's amazing. And if you're even doubtful, they could just Google it, Soul Treat, and see all the reviews from the last one. It was transformational. I'm so excited.
Well, what attracted me to it, to be a presenter at Soul Treat is, what you were describing is the interaction between the presenters and the attendees of the retreat. I can't count the classes and retreats and things that I've been to where I'm going to see somebody that I really admire. I really honor their work, and they run on and run off the stage or run in and run out of the room. And they're just like untouchable.
Unless you pay a lot of money to have like a VIP lunch with them or something like that.
Right. They're untouchable. They're unapproachable. And it's like, even in real life, there's this, they're not real aspect to them. Right. And so it's like, you can sit in the audience, but you stay there. Don't try to come to me. Don't try to ask any questions and I'm like, that's not who I am. So
Totally.
yeah. And so there have been other times when I've been in classes, and it really is more the exception than the rule, but it's happened a few times where the presenters are really approachable. They're really vulnerable in who they are. They're really honest. And that's where I've gotten the most growth from attending classes and workshops in real life. And I'm like, if I'm going to present at a retreat, that's the type of retreat I want to be part of. I don't want to be in this separation, like you stay there and I'll stay here and you just listen to what I say and trust me.
Well, yes. And the reason why we specifically set that model up is for what I shared here. I don't think any of us are on a different level than anyone else. Like, I think we're all each other's teachers. And so the presenters there are sitting in the same workshops you are, doing their own work.
Yes.
Like, so we're all in this together. And then, like I said, at nighttime, we have a mixer. So it's so important that everybody learns from everybody.
Yeah.
And it is set up from day one that way, that we're all in this together.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing you just now said, the presenters doing their own work. Oh man, is that so important? I've
Selfishly, I did this because I wanted to do more work. I'm like, well, what can I do? Let me get a bunch of experts in and let me do their work, and then invite people and make it a retreat.
Right. Yeah. Be wary of any practitioner who is trying to take you somewhere they've never been themselves. And they're trying to guide you through work that they're not doing themselves.
We, in the vetting of everybody that's going to be a presenter, it's and just like the Wellness Universe in general, everybody has done the work, and that's why they're doing the work they do in the world, is because of their own healing and their own walking through. And that's why I say, even as a self-love coach, I'm practicing every single day ways to love myself more, and anyone, as you just said, run for the hills. Anyone who says that they know it all and have learned it all, or even haven't done it themselves, there's nobody you should ever work with. Just saying.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what exactly is a self-love coach?
So for me, what it is really teaching people the practices that I shared before, these different areas of self-love, really letting people, of course, express who they are and really their challenges. Like anything, as most know, a coach is not a therapist. So we're not there to deal with, to heal all of your past traumas. But it really is about the recognition and acknowledgement of where you are. And then in the ways that you can show up being more compassionate with yourself, teaching you ways of more kindness, teaching you ways of expressing yourself in the world, teaching you ways of respecting yourself and honoring yourself. So there's all these different areas of self-love, as I've shared. And that's what we do in the sessions. Because as you build each of those, every week, or as often as you come, you end up realizing that you've built your whole entire insides up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. And I know that you said, I want to make sure I get this right, so please let me know. I know that you said anybody who is listening or watching or even reads the blog, because there will be a blog about this. If you're not a watcher or listener, you can read, you can read the podcast episode. It's $150 off. For anybody who wants to participate in Shari's 12-week Love Yourself Happy coaching program. And the way to do that is just reach out to Shari at sharialyse.com and mention the Yes and podcast.
Yes, you're perfectly right. Yes, my 12-week Love Yourself Happy program, which we will actually go over the 12 areas of self-love. And so just definitely contact me and we'll get you going. For me, at the end of the day, Jennifer, when somebody can look at themselves and love, and I mean love, and accept who they see back, that's a life well lived, and in whatever way that looks like. And like I said, not perfection. I'm not perfect. And as soon as I've released that is when all of the beauty shows up, because it's in all those imperfect moments.
Right. Yeah. And that's so important, because perfectionism is often that, one of those compensatory behaviors that we use to try to force the round, the round peg into the square hole.
That's right.
Yeah. We try to force ourselves. We try to make ourselves relevant instead of just allowing ourselves to be who we are and realizing that we are relevant.
Yeah.
Just now as we are.
Just being born.
Yeah.
Just being born, drawing breath. And it took me many years to get to that place because I was the one that was trying to run the race, and I still can find myself caught up in that behavior. But what's beautiful about right now is that I recognize it a much sooner. Mm-hmm. And then I'm forgiving of myself and compassionate with myself and kind to myself.
Yes. And again, that's another part that is so important is, you've mentioned it before. We never let go of our challenges. We're always going to have challenges, but yes, we see them sooner and we have the tools to deal with them and the capacity to handle the temporary uproar. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a week.
Yeah. And it is what you need.
Exactly. And since I've chosen to face myself, as we talked about earlier, like I don't wallow in those painful, suffering feelings inside myself anymore. Usually they come and go within minutes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm in a funk for a day. Very rarely does it spill over into the next day anymore. I don't sit in that suffering inside myself anymore for days, weeks, months, or even years at a time.
Because you recognize now you've obviously been witness to what comes out the other side.
Exactly.
Exactly. And there's this fine line because when challenges do arise, I already know what the other side is going to be like. I already know I'm going to expand. I already know I'm going to grow. I already know things are going to be better. But there is still, because people can then, that whole spiritual bypass and like not pay attention to what actually hurts. And so I'm a big believer in still acknowledging the pain that shows up, even if you're going to get through it, right, to still be there with you in that moment. But the sitting in it and then the suffering and then the making the poor choices because you're beating yourself up over it. Those are the things that you get to skip out on.
Exactly. Because what I experience now is when I'm faced with a challenge, and right now in my personal life, I'm faced with a pretty big one. And it's like, all right, bring it on. I got this.
Totally.
But there has to be that, oh God, here we go. Okay, I got this, bring it on. But there's still that moment
as opposed to like, oh God, here we go. Why does my life feel like this? Why am I always being dealt an unhealthy hand? Which was my life before. I called myself the dark cloud.
Yeah, it's that brief acknowledgement within yourself of, oh shit, here we go. But I got this, bring it on.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes, exactly.
Although we actually don't have to fight it. We get to just go, okay.
Yeah.
What are you here to show me? What are you here to show me?
Yeah. That's why it's like, that sigh, it's like, okay, all right, I got this.
Completely.
So, acknowledging the yin and the yang of the challenge.
Yes. And we hope for the less challenges, of course. But I always know, this book wouldn't have been written without the challenges, right, without those harder moments. And do I wish sometimes that we didn't have to go through them? Sure. But then there's always that thing that, we say is like, if everything was always here, you wouldn't know you were here. It would just be the norm.
Right. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Shari, it has been really wonderful to talk to you today and have you on the show. Before we finally sign off, are there any final tips or bits of wisdom you would like to leave with our listeners?
I think I just would say just to be gentle with yourself, gentle with what comes up, gentle with how you walk through the world, to just be good to you in whatever way and whatever that feels for you and in whatever shows up.
Oh, that's beautiful. Shari, thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. It's been an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
We have just concluded another episode of the Yes and podcast with Jennifer Whitaker. For additional resources, please visit our website, jenniferwhitaker.com. Leave a review if you enjoyed the show and find it useful. Until next time, continue challenging conventional thinking and keep moving forward.